Okay, folks, so now we're ready for this one called the medical model, and this would be corrections 3, part 3. So let me put that up here for us. And so in this medical model, actually, it really started as an outgrowth of that progressive model, and it really started to work in about 1930 is when they used that as a development. And a medical model was really developed mostly by a guy by the name of Howard Hill. And we'll see in the PowerPoint slides that he was important in the development of this concept, and it was put into place at the Norfolk Correctional Facility in Massachusetts. And I'm going to do this the old way so that you can know what we're talking about. And so Norfolk, here again, started in 1927, and it was based upon a lot of these concepts that were espoused by Howard Hill. And then there were other people who were involved in this. And so there was a gentleman by the name of Gill, G-I-L-L. And in 1929, we have what we call now generally the federal program, which what we call the BOP. It's Federal Bureau of Prisons, so BOP, or what we call BOP. And BOP is the Bureau of Prisons. We say BOP as opposed to DOC or words to that effect, which are usually state organizations. So DOC or DOC versus BOP, which is federal. So just so you know a little bit of the parlance, let's say, of the times. Stanford Bates was one of the big advocates for this federal program. And so that's kind of scary, you know, when we see that name Bates. But basically, Mr. Bates was really involved in a lot of ideas and came out with a lot of the concepts in what we call the medical model. Well, this carried on for many years. It actually went from like the early 30s up into the 50s. They used things like psychiatry. They used other things. They felt that there were medical problems that a lot of these people had. Mentally deficient, for example, and I found that I could see where someone would get that idea because they are somehow mentally affected, and you see that a lot. Low IQ people tend to get in trouble. But then on the other part of it is that there are other people that are very, very smart. I mean, the smartest and really the low functioning are seen a lot in the population of prisons. So a lot of guys are smart and lazy, and so in a way this medical model, it doesn't really work for everyone. Well, after World War II, they saw that psychiatry may have a role to play in this, and so they began using this, especially Maryland used it in the Pawtuxet Institution, and so a number of these different things were tried. Well, what we ended up going to was after the medical model, they tried that for a while. They moved on to what we call community programs in the 60s. And this was what we call the Earl Warren years. So in the 1960s, we had these community programs. What they wanted to do was work with a lot of different offenders in the community, not out in prisons. Or what they wanted to do was give them an opportunity. So they got them involved in gardening, trying to teach them some kind of skills, you know, different kinds of work training programs. For example, Job Corps started in this time period for younger people. Not all of them were offenders. They were just people that needed an opportunity. So basically some kind of work training. So they developed some skills, maybe as a mechanic. They could be involved in heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, different things like that, that would help them to become a good citizen. So this was in the 1960s through 70s. And then we hit a really bad period after that. which was called well, it's bad from my perspective. Some of you may believe in it, but this next part was called the crime control model, And what really ended up happening was that around 1970 or so, crime started to really go up. And so crime's really rising. And then in 74, this guy Martinson comes out with something that says, nothing works in all this stuff that they were trying to do in the 60s. So rehabilitation is a failure. And so all you can do is just really crack hard on people. And so this is what they call the get tough on crime people. So what we have is get tough on crime. This persists today. A lot of people ignore statistics and just carry on with this original thinking. I know a lot of elderly people, they just believe that crime is out of control. My mother included. I talk to them about what's going on, and they just smile, and they just go on their way thinking that everything's going to hell in a handbasket, So a lot of this, basically, Martinson himself even decried the fact that a lot of petitions said, well, if nothing works, then we're going to just do this get tough on crime. So what they ended up doing, and here's the crazy thing on this, and basically we're coming down to the end, but I do want to share, that in 1970, and I put this on the board in different things, but crime started going like this. Well, in 1990, it started doing this. So let's say this is 2010, okay? Well, the bad thing is that the judges are trying to get reelected, and who votes? Elderly people always vote. And if elderly people tend to believe that crime is out of control no matter what you try to tell them, because after all, they're older and experienced, and they just don't keep up with the times. They get set on an idea, and they get stuck there. So about 1974, imprisonment started to go up, okay? And so what we end up seeing is that clear out in here, people are still being put in prison, and that they're being put in prison for lesser and lesser and lesser offenses. And so this is an issue, and as we go into the 21st century, 21st century approaches, are saying, we've got to get up off of that. And some states like New York, for example, have had tremendous success with new ideas, and I don't know if you can even see this, but I'm going to refer to it. Spellman in 2009 has come out with a comment that is very telling, and he says, and you'll see this in the PowerPoint also, is that we now are spending huge amounts of taxpayer dollars to spend scarce resources that we need for other things like education. And we're putting petty thieves, drug addicts, and first-time offenders in prison. And I can absolutely assure you that that's true. In 1975, when I started, it seemed like everybody got probation on their first offense. Now today, everybody gets some kind of time. I don't care what the offense is. It could be some small offense, shoplifting or something. Well, you got to do 30 days in jail. All the way up to burglary or something. Everybody's going to prison. And then you can do your probation later, what we call a split sentence. So basically in 2008, a figure that stands out from the Bureau of Justice Statistics says that 7.3 million Americans were under some kind of supervision, either in prison, in jail, on probation, or on some kind of supervision, maybe parole or something like that. And so, the correctional population has doubled, and instead of going down like crime is going down, the correctional population continues to go up in our prisons and jails. And part of this has been blamed also on the advent of private prisons, that lobbyists and private prisons try to continue to foster this belief that we have to get tough on crime. Unfortunately, they're even seeing some cases where judges are taking bribes to put children that would normally be admonished and released into boys' school, into a private boys' school. This happened twice in Pennsylvania. They finally caught up with these guys, but only after one of these children killed himself while he was locked up. And he had done just a very nominal, small offense. So this is something that we need to look at. We need to realize that, this costs money. All this costs money. The crime itself costs money, but crime is way down here. But the punishments now that they're using are kind of retro back to Middle Ages or whatever, and they're putting everybody in prison, locking them up for some simple things that might benefit from things like the medical model or the psychiatric model or a number of other different approaches that we've touched on throughout history. There are some more modern ones too that we've touched on in the areas of rehabilitation, in the areas of mediation, forms of fulfillment of obligations to the victim through working, community service, different things, restitution, and the hard fact is that if someone's in prison, they cannot make restitution. They generally make about 80 cents a day, and then a lot of that gets gobbled up just to cover their food and different things while they're in prison. So a lot of what we're doing now, it seems to be a little bit misguided, and so we'd ask you to consider these different things, and of course keep an open mind. That's one perspective. There's a lot of different perspectives out there, but give this a look, and then we'll talk about it in the discussion boards. Thanks for viewing, thanks for paying attention, and we'll come back with more later. Thank you.